AMD and Nvidia have both released their new GPUs for VR and 4K gaming, and the specs are in. Now the question is, which GPU is right for you? Let's talk about Nvidia and AMD, both of which have new hardware coming out. Nvidia's Pascal architecture and AMD's Polaris architecture. Now, before I begin, you should know that this video is geared towards gaming. If you're someone that's looking to do something more CPU intensive, such as video editing or music production, then this isn't for you. Additionally, I will not be talking about AMD's RX 470 because, as of right now, none of the specifications have been formally announced for that card. And with that out of the way, let's get started. So Nvidia's GTX 1080 and GTX 1070, as well as the AMD RX 480, all have impressive specifications for their respective price ranges, and I would consider any of these cards to be a sound investment depending on the type of performance that you're expecting to achieve. Now, let's talk about their individual specifications. First up is the clock speed. Nvidia's GTX 1080 comes out on top with a staggering 1607 MHz a second, with the GTX 1070 following just short of it with an impressive 1502 MHz per second. Unfortunately, the most detail that we've received about AMD's RX 480 thus far is that it has 5 teraflops of computing power. So, with a bit of number crunching, we can compare that to the GTX 1070's 6.5 teraflops and reason that the RX 480 will most likely come out somewhere around 1200 MHz per second, which is a very respectable speed. Next is the memory. Again, the GTX 1080 remains on top, with 8 GB of GDDR5X running at 10 GB per second, while the GTX 1070 and the RX 480 come in at a tie with 8 GB of GDDR5 running at 8 GB per second. While the extra 2 GB per second of memory bandwidth on the GTX 1080 will definitely come in handy for any of you who are looking to game in 4K, the 8 GB per second on the GTX 1070 and the RX 480 will be more than enough to handle any visually demanding games at 1440p. And now, the power consumption. With Pascal designed on a 16nm system and Polaris on a 14nm system, each card's architecture allows for it to be both more powerful and more power efficient than its previous generational counterpart. So, based on relative performance and power consumption, this round actually goes to the GTX 1070, as its specifications rival that of the GTX 1080 in many respects, and it only consumes a measly 150 watts. Then, falling just short are the GTX 1080 and RX 480 at 180 and 150 watts respectively. Finally, let's talk about the value proposition. When taking into account each card's overall performance with their individual retail costs, I have to go with the GTX 1070. At $380 for a card that can run even the most graphically intense games at maxed out settings on 1440p, the other two cards just can't compete. Where you would spend about $200 more to move into 4K gaming at around high settings with the GTX 1080, or spend about $200 less to get in mid-level 1440p card with the RX 480, the GTX 1070 wins this category in spades. Now we could talk for days about which card is better, but really, none of these cards are better than the other. They each offer varying levels of performance and varying ranges of price, so which one is right for you? Well, if you're the kind of gamer that is looking to get into VR and 4K gaming, or who wants to future-proof your rig as much as possible, the GTX 1080 is definitely for you. With unrivaled performance and the ability to SLI 2 or even more together, this one is going to last the long haul. Conversely, if you're looking to do a budget build for VR or 1440p gaming, the RX 480 is what you want. With its modest price tag and respectable performance, it's the best option for you. However, if you're looking to get the most bang for your buck, or you're not planning on making the jump to 4K anytime soon, but you still want to run games at absolute maximum settings in 1440p or game in VR, then buy the GTX 1070. With its unbeatable value and impressive specifications, you really can't go wrong with this card. The great thing about this generation of graphics processors is that Nvidia and AMD both genuinely seem to be targeting different groups of consumers, with Nvidia going after the ultra high-end market and AMD taking the low to mid-range market. So there really isn't a wrong decision to be made here. Just decide what matters to you, and then pick the card that best aligns with that. So that's it for now. Be sure to hit that thumbs up if you liked the video, or if you think that I'm stupid and anyone who doesn't get a GTX 1080 is an absolute moron, then definitely hit that thumbs down. Comment if you've got something to say, and subscribe if you want to be updated with more content that I release in the future. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this is The Case, signing out.